Welcome to Flying Upstream, the podcast where we uncover the choices, practices, and wisdom that defy mainstream conventions. I'm Kristen.
And I'm Louisa, and together we're here to illuminate the alternative paths that have shaped human experiences through the ages. In each episode, we'll examine ways to move beyond societal norms. We're passionate about how timeless wisdom and unique lifestyle choices can foster healthier, sustainable, and enriching lives.
Join us as we navigate, challenge, and celebrate the beauty and insight of walking the road less traveled. If you've ever felt like you're flying north for the winter while everyone else is flying south, you've found your flock. Welcome, everyone. Today we're talking about auras. Now, if you're not familiar with auras, they are a subtle energy field that are believed to be surrounding all living beings. This is humans, this is trees and plants, it's pets, it's everything, essentially. So today we're going to dive a little bit further into it. Not just what are they, but how can they help us? How can you, as just an average person out there, learn to read auras? And what can you do with those readings? Of course, today I'm joined with my co-host, Louisa Anderson, and
Hello.
let's dive in.
Let's go. So, Kristen, I think this is a topic that was very interesting to me. And I've heard of auras before. So, I'd heard basically what you've shared so far is the idea that they surround and they radiate a few inches or up to a few feet beyond our physical body. And I also know that they're related to colors. And that's as much as I knew until I started researching this topic. So, one of the things that I learned was that this concept appears across various cultures and spiritual traditions. So, apparently, there are people who, all the way back in what we call ancient times, have been actually using this as a tool for diagnosing and for medical reasons. Were you able to come across anything like that?
Yeah, it's really fascinating. So people who are adept at seeing auras, as you said, can diagnose medical conditions. Some people can even tell if somebody is approaching the end of their life. And by seeing these, it's a common, gentle way to be able to help people without it being really invasive, without having to go to specialists and doctors and that sort of thing. And I'm not suggesting don't go to the doctor. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that it's a really kind way to see where somebody's at with their life at that moment and be present for them. And if warranted, provide some help.
Yeah, I love that. And so, one of the things that comes to mind when I think about auras and the little bit that I have known about them is the different colors. So, I haven't always understood like what the colors mean. And I also did learn that it seems like there is no universal agreed upon like color chart of what means what as far as auras go. But I did come across the concept that they're associated with the chakra colors, which chakras, that's the world I live in. And I did learn that there are some traditions that connect the auras to the chakras, specifically in the Buddhist and in the Tao cultures. They have utilized the same color system as the chakra system as part of their aura identification system. And as far as the colors go, one of the things that I now know is that they're associated, for example, the red in the chakra chart is associated with the same thing that when those cultures perceive the colors of our auras refer to. In the case of, for example, like the red, if your aura is red, it's understood to mean that it's related to the foundational of your beings, the same things that are associated with your root chakra, which I found to be very interesting.
Yeah, that's it's interesting you bring up that they're related to chakras because this all fits into the larger category of energy healing, which is using someone's aura to help with energy healing, using chakras to help the world of Reiki and other energy healings, even yoga. These are all things that kind of are part of that larger category, I would say, to help with it. And because there's so much diversity for the roots of all these things, like Reiki is Japanese, yoga is believed to come from India. The fact that the different pieces of energy healing have come and been developed from all over the world, it's no wonder that there isn't a lot of consistency around the meaning of the colors. However, what you're saying is that there actually is some consistency, which to me holds a lot of weight around the fact that this is true and it really works, right? If you have people from all over the world and hundreds of years ago, people didn't speak the same language as necessarily, had trouble communicating perhaps, that it really means a lot today. So when you're talking about the color red, for example, that really just tells me that the meaning of that is not necessarily coming from people and communicating across continents, perhaps, but coming from potentially a higher source that is communicating to us what red means, what orange means, what chakra it's linked to.
Yeah. And it also aligns very much with the idea of quantum physics, right? Where we keep talking about how we finally, the astrophysicist
Neil
Neil,
deGrasse Tyson.
yes, yes, that person. But the idea that everything is energy and we are all made up of the same things, it really comes into alignment when we think about the auras and the chakras and Reiki and all these other energy healing modalities that have been around for centuries. And it's okay, science has finally caught up and at least at the very foundational level, acknowledge that we're not all crazy and in support of what medicine men and women from ancient cultures from the beginning of time have been utilizing as a source to be able to identify how people are feeling and to be able to help people with medical issues and medical concerns. And like you mentioned, even knowing when someone is close to the end of life, we didn't have all these tools that we have today. We didn't have all the blood work and we didn't have all the MRI machines and all the x-ray machines and all those things. So when I think about how medicine men and women back in forever ago were able to help people and why they were considered medicine men and women, I think it was their ability. Hey, listeners, we're taking a quick break to talk about something delicious and close to our hearts. Kristen, you've got something exciting to share, right?
Absolutely, Louisa. When I went vegan, I found that having some go-to recipes really made the transition easier. That's why I've created a place to help everyone go from vegan curious to vegan confident.
That sounds so amazing. So where can our listeners find these resources?
They can visit my website, KristenMedeiros.com. I've packed it with all the tips and tricks that helped me change my lifestyle so that you can make your vegan journey smooth and enjoyable.
And there's more, right? I heard you're offering something special for our podcast listeners.
Yes, just for our listeners. Head on over to KristenMedeiros.com right now to start your path to becoming vegan confident. Get my favorite recipes that I really used when I was transitioning to veganism. It's all on my website.
That is awesome. Do not wait, folks. Visit KristenMedeiros.com today and take the first step towards a healthier, compassionate lifestyle. Kristen, thanks for sharing this great resource.
Thank you, Louisa. I'm so excited to see how everyone's journey unfolds. Remember, being vegan isn't just good for you, it's good for the planet too.
To be able to see, to read energy, and in this case, to be able to read auras. And I have personally, based on my own belief system, I have absolutely no doubt that there is a universal understanding, even if the colors vary slightly, that our energetic body is able to tell so much about us, much like what I teach, right? Like about the chakras. There's so much that we can learn that comes from our energetic body. And scientifically speaking, we know why, because we are made up of energy. We are energy.
You're right. And it's fascinating how is true evidence that ancient civilizations use this, that it was a big part of their day-to-day lives. And just to give a recap of the history of auras, because I find it fascinating, ancient civilizations, including Egyptians, Greeks, and Hindus, have all referenced the concept of auras in their religious and philosophical texts. Even in ancient Indian spiritual traditions, auras were described as prana, or vital life force energy that permeates the body and extends beyond it. So it continues throughout history. Plato and Aristotle even discussed auras as the ether, or the quintessence, the material that filled the universe beyond the earthly realm. So this has been a common theme throughout history. The Renaissance, for example, alchemists and mystics were exploring the idea of auras as part of their quest for spiritual enlightenment. In the 20th century, with the rise of the New Age movement, there was a ton of interest in auras, which led to the development of aura photography and other aura reading techniques. So there is a specific type of photography called Kirillin photography that helps people see the aura on the actual photograph. So the person being photographed will sit in a chair, they'll put their hand on a special machine and it's connected to the camera. So when you look at the picture, you actually do see colors around the person. So because there's so much interest throughout time, technology actually did catch up with it, right? Somebody really did invent a special kind of technique in camera that can capture this. Despite skepticism from the scientific community and maybe the larger world, there's so much evidence of this throughout history and even with some technology that speaks to this. It's hard to say that just because we can't see it, it doesn't exist.
Yeah, and when we think about that concept, like the idea that because we can't see it, it doesn't exist, then that takes away most belief systems, right? Because none of us have seen what most of us consider to be God. And what part of the human population has some sort of belief in a God? So I don't think it's fair to say that because we can't see it, that it doesn't exist. And I know that traditionally we have associated reading the auras as a concept that has been associated with like psychics and healers. And even like I mentioned, it would always be the medicine men and women in these ancient cultures. But I do think that if we actually were able to slow down our lives and pay more attention, that most of us could have some sort of experience that maybe not necessarily read auras on a daily basis as we're walking down the street, but to be able to experience it, be able to see it to some capacity, and at least acknowledge that it's something that is real. I just think that things that we don't see with the naked eye, we tend to, especially in Western culture, we tend to just be like, yeah, that doesn't exist and shut it down because we expect for there to be some scientific evidence to support the existence of whatever we believe in. But that's unrealistic to think because, like I said earlier, then I think most religions and spirituality gets tossed out the door if we're going to live our lives that way. Can you read auras, Kristen?
I've tried. I'm certainly not a master yet, but there's a couple techniques I've tried. How about you, Louisa?
No, I can't. It's interesting, right? Because I can see chakras with my claircognizance, but I actually cannot read auras. My kids and I went through a couple weeks where we were trying to see each other's auras and we like talked about it every day. And I feel like I was starting to be able to identify them, but we gave up after a few weeks. I've never successfully been able to see auras the way that some people explain it. I did have a spiritual coach who mentioned that her young children had the capacity to see auras like on a regular daily basis.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's pretty neat. I tried for a little while. So the tip I got was for beginners. What you do is you put your hand out in front of you, spread your fingers apart, stand about a foot away from a white wall. So there's nothing distracting color-wise or pattern-wise on the wall. And with some good lighting, you put your hand out and you stare at the tip of your middle finger for about a minute. And what you should start to see is not necessarily colors yet, but just like a soft haze around your hand and around each finger, almost like a bit of a fog.
Yes. Yes.
So I've tried that and I was able to see that. That's about as far as I got though.
Mine is
Uh,
green.
Ooh,
Which is
Ooh.
funny because they say, at least for the chakras, that you're attracted to the color associated with how you're feeling, etc.
Oh,
And
wow.
I pulled up this green sweater today and I saw green based on the exercise that you just shared.
Oh, I
Thank
love that.
you. I love it.
That's really neat. That's
That's
really
neat.
neat.
Thank you for sharing that. That's awesome. I'm really excited.
I heard the next step was to try to see auras on trees or basically not people yet because sometimes it can be easier to see them on plants. So I've tried that. I haven't had a ton of luck with that yet, but I'm not giving up. I'm still working on it. And it's nice because it's something that I can do with my kids too. And we look at nature, and of course, nature is always beautiful. So it's always a win no matter what. But that's my next step that I'm working on right now.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. And you know what? You brought up a great topic, which is it's something that you can work on even with your kids because I think about the value in all this, right? I teach about the chakras and I indulge very much in the world of the chakras, and I fully believe in quantum energy, energy healing, and all of that. And I think the importance of teaching our children about something as simple as auras is immense. I think there's so much value in teaching them because if we think about the ancient medicine men and women, which I'm a little obsessed with, and how they were able to help people that way, as we try to teach our own children maybe methods that are unconventional and just different ways to take care of themselves and to help others, this could be something that perhaps they take on in their own lives and are able to apply, and it could possibly impact someone someday.
Oh,
So I
yeah.
love that.
Absolutely. And I love that idea of continuing to pass it on to the next generation and not being a blocker just because I can't necessarily see auras yet doesn't mean my children can't, or doesn't mean that they're not interested in it, right?
Yeah.
Because there's so much to do. It's not just seeing it, right? You mentioned earlier the work that you are doing with chakras, and I'm wondering if the work that you do with chakras also is trying to help cleanse and heal some of the chakras. Is that right? And then maybe how does that extend to the auras too?
Yeah, and that's a good point you bring up because that's one of the things I teach is how to identify your chakra blockages is the main thing. How to identify where you're feeling blocked, and I teach people techniques like visualizations to be able to identify that and then move on to teaching them how to open and how to keep their chakras balanced. When you cleanse that, how does that affect your aura? Does that change it? Does that impact it positively? Where maybe there are strengths to colors, because this happens to me in my claircognizance is I can see how the vibrancy, I can see how vibrant a chakra is, how bright the color is, how vibrant it is, or it is not, which helps me to help people identify to what extent it's closed and to what extent it needs to be open and to know when it's fully open. So I wonder if perhaps the auras has a similar system where maybe once we cleanse the chakras, what it does is makes that color more vibrant or something. Something to explore.
Yeah. I wonder how aura colors extend further to personality traits, your emotions, your psychological well-being, and not just necessarily the physical body. If you may have problems with your liver, for example, but and not just, oh, I'm sad because my ice cream fell on the floor, but real emotional things that you're working through and how all of that kind of relates. So when you are healing the chakras, having that extend to the auras, and then can that actually make you happier?
That's a great question. It sounds like we need to do a study on this.
Yes, we definitely do.
We definitely do. I love that. I love the fact that we can take these points and connect them because ultimately what we're discussing today and what we are trying to share is the effects of aura. Can they be used as a medical tool? They have been in the past by different cultures and civilizations, and how we can gauge them and how we can read the auras. And it ultimately comes down to our health, right? Like, how can we use this tool as another tool to impact our well being? And it's a beautiful connection to be able to have other sources of reference where we can think about how does that then impact the chakras, or how do the chakras impact the aura? Because I think it just starts to create this bigger picture of how we individually have so much control over our own well-being in our physical bodies and what is immediately outside of it, right? That energetic field immediately outside of ourselves. And because it impacts, like you mentioned, our mental, our emotional, and our spiritual well being as well, let's explore these beautiful things, in this case, auras that have existed, and let's see how it could impact our well being. What can we do with it to make our lives better?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I am very much into this shamanic culture. I follow Alberto Villoldo. And if you heard me talk about him before, you understand the depths to which I love this man's journey, because he was a traditional doctor. He was a traditional medical doctor in the Western civilization. One of the stories that has always stuck with me since I started to follow him was him sharing his first journey down to, I believe it was to the Amazon. He was training with some shamans in the Amazon. And he met with these medicine men and women. And it was him who introduced them to the fact that we're not hollow beings. They operate under the belief, or operated under the belief, that we were hollow inside. He was the first one to introduce to them that we have organs and tissues and cells. And what he learned was that they utilize the chakra system, so our energetic body, to identify whether someone's ill, what they're ill from, etc. This is the way that they were helping people since the history of that culture, since the history of their people. That is how they have been doing it. And I think that really speaks to the value that there is in exploring the auras and how they may affect our well-being. And I really do hope that everyone can go out there and explore the potential health benefits of being able to read auras, and the potential health benefits of being able to serve others by being able to read auras, or by teaching others to read auras. Because I think that it could be something that could be very impactful for all of us.
I think everything we've said today is just fascinating. And it only proves that so much more dialogue is warranted and more community to get people involved in this, because it's happening. Auras are there. Everyone has one, whether you want to believe it or not, it's already there. All right, free spirits, that's all the time we have for today on Flying Upstream.
We hope this episode sparked your curiosity and ignited a desire to explore the extraordinary paths less traveled.
Even when the current feels strong, a whole world of possibilities awaits.
We'll see you next time on the other side of mainstream.
So keep questioning, keep challenging, and most importantly, keep flying upstream.